You know, it's long been known that leftists have read precisely two books, no more, no less. Out of hundreds of millions of English language works of literature, leftists have only read Harry Potter as children and as adults, and The Handmaid's Tale as adults, hopefully. And that's it. A liberal's library could fit inside a porta potty. And if you want to understand a leftist worldview, that's an important fact to comprehend. They don't know anything about history because they don't read history books. They don't know anything about good storytelling because they're addicted to Netflix. And they're not creative thinkers, nor are they familiar with the concept of nuance because their minds have been dulled by decades of constant exposure to streaming services and cable news propaganda. Reading requires and inspires patience and contemplation. And in general, the left don't have time for either of those things. And rather than address this obvious vulnerability, say by encouraging their audience to open a new book for once in their lives, left-wing media have decided to double down on this. They've continued to obsess over these two books and their authors because it's the only way they can relate to their audience. And that brings us to this recent segment on 60 Minutes in which the 85-year-old feminist author Margaret Atwood, who wrote The Handmaid's Tale, is once again warning about the imminent dangers of fascism and Trump and all of that. Now, 10 years ago, you could maybe to some degree see the appeal of promoting somebody like Margaret Atwood from a left-wing perspective. They needed to fearmonger about what the first Trump administration was going to do, about how women all over the country will be subjugated and forced to cover their entire bodies, sort of like they do in Afghanistan or Minneapolis. So they dug up Atwood's 1985 dystopian novel, turned it into a 6-season Hulu series beginning in 2017, and gave it every Emmy Award in existence. That was the gambit. And it obviously didn't work for the same reason that climate scientists failed to convince America that a new ice age was going to destroy the planet in the 1970s. With the passage of time, it became abundantly clear that Margaret Atwood had no idea what she was talking about, just like the climate scientists. So you'd think by now everybody would have moved on. The ship has sailed on this particular fear-mongering technique, but 60 Minutes, under the new leadership of Barry Weiss, apparently disagrees. They've decided to go back to the well one more time, and here's how that segment began.
This week on 60 Minutes, we sit down with Canada's best-known author, Margaret Atwood. Now 85, she has published 64 books and counting, including the best-selling The Handmaid's Tale.
Under his eye. Under his eye.
Published in 1985, The Handmaid's Tale depicts a near-future America overtaken by religious dictatorship, where a dwindling number of fertile women are forced to cloak themselves in red and bear children for the elite. The book would sell more than 10 million copies and spawn an Emmy-winning Hulu series.
These are rare books, so a lot of them.
At the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library in Toronto, Atwood has archived stacks of her research. That is, the hundreds of news clippings that substantiate her plots.
Women forced to have babies.
Communists are making women have babies. Persistent non-pregnancy will be considered a crime against the state. I did get a tweet which the guy said, "How does Margaret Atwood make up this weird shit?" And I said, it's not me making up this weird shit, it's the human race. So we're in the Cold War here. I was very interested in totalitarianisms, and I was very interested in how they get that way. But Harvard, I didn't like hearing people say it can't happen here, because anything can happen anywhere given the circumstances.
So right off the bat, we have a narrative violation here. She's supposed to say that Donald Trump and the Republicans are bringing back fascism and all that, and that's what every leftist who's seen the Hulu show is expecting. And indeed, later on in the interview, she does get into that. She blames Reagan and the religious right. But at the start of the segment, that's not what happens. Instead, she shows the news clipping that she used for inspiration, and she says that the idea of mandatory pregnancy was based on an old communist policy. And obviously, if there's a side of the American political spectrum that worships Soviet-style communism at the moment, it's not the Trump administration. So that's a little awkward, but the point is, according to Margaret Atwood, something similar could happen in America because, quote, anything can happen anywhere. But how exactly could the same thing happen in America? It's been nearly a decade since Trump's first term began. What exactly are the signs that we're about to have mandatory pregnancy laws or anything like that? Well, it takes a few minutes, but eventually the segment gets around to answering that question, or at least attempting to. They show Margaret Atwood shooting a flamethrower at a fireproof version of her book. And then they portray her as a victim of these mythical book bannings. Watch.
here she is taking a flamethrower to her own book. Atwood was firing back at would-be book burners by torching an Unburnable edition. It was all promotion for a charity auction to benefit PEN America, a nonprofit that champions free speech. Atwood's books have been banned for content deemed overly sexual, morally corrupt, anti-Christian. She told us she was particularly peeved when a recent ban came from Edmonton, Alberta, in her own country.
The government put out an edict to all school boards saying that they couldn't have any books in the library that had either direct or indirect sex. What is indirect sex? You had any
Science fiction.
indirect sex lately?
Now, just out of a morbid sense of curiosity, because you can't trust anything that airs on 60 Minutes or CBS News, I looked into this alleged book banning that the government of Alberta was supposedly engaging in. And as it turns out, as you may have guessed, it was an example of malicious compliance. Essentially what happened is that the premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, wanted to ban pornographic books from school libraries, which makes sense. So she told the school board to remove books that were not age appropriate because they contain sexually graphic content, including so-called LGBT books that are really a form of grooming. And in response, the Edmonton Public School Board, which is made up of leftists, decided to ban 1984, The Godfather, Jaws, and so on, in addition to The Handmaid's Tale. So they deliberately misread the government's directive to make a point. They banned the book, along with some classics, in order to cook up a pretext for book bans. And of course, Margaret Atwood was happy to play the victim. This is from CBC News, quote, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith slammed the Edmonton Public School Board Friday morning for its banned book list, which features more than 200 titles. Edmonton Public is clearly doing a little vicious compliance over what the direction is, Smith said. The point of this book is to keep graphic, sexually explicit content out of elementary schools, she said. If they need us to hold their hand through the process to identify what kind of materials are appropriate, we will more than happily work with them to work through their list one by one so we can be super clear about what it is we're trying to do. So that was several months ago. The government of Alberta clarified the ban, and everybody now fully understands that it only applies to graphic images of sexual content and does not include books like The Handmaid's Tale. But all of those details are apparently missing from the 60 Minutes segment, so we're left with the fake victim narrative when it's not even remotely accurate. But really, this is all a moot point, because even if The Handmaid's Tale were still banned in Alberta public schools, the segment still wouldn't make any sense for two reasons. First of all, the book is about a rape ritual. It is perverse, and it's a political work of feminism. It's also bad literature, just a bad book. It's not well written. Margaret Atwood is not a good author. She just writes pulpy trash. That's what she does. And so it's completely normal for a parent to want to keep that kind of garbage out of their child's school library. It's like any of the trash books you see like in an airport, right? That for middle-aged women to read on the flight. You're not going to put that stuff in a school library for kids. A lot of the times the material is not appropriate, but also it has no artistic value. It has no literary value. You can't have every book in existence in a school library. Only a small number can be in the library. And that's because, more importantly, removing a book from a school library is not banning the book, because the book is available literally everywhere else. Okay, so if Handmaid's Tale is banned because it's not in a school library, then that means that almost every book that's ever been written is banned, because almost none of them are in school libraries. When she says banned, if by banned she means the book is available everywhere that books are sold and has been obsessively promoted by every major media outlet for decades, adapted into 6 seasons of a streaming show on Hulu, and not actually banned at any store in any form at all, then yeah, the book has definitely been banned. If by banned she means you can buy the book in paperback, hardcover, or Kindle on Amazon right now for $9, then yeah, it's banned. If by banned she means you can buy it right now and have it show up on your doorstep in 12 hours for $9, then yeah, it's a banned book. Well, it's gift-giving season, and if you're searching for a gift for the loved one in your life who is an avid tea drinker or for whatever reason just can't seem to drink enough water during the day, look no further than Cove Pure. I've talked about Cove Pure before. It's a countertop water purifier. It's easy to install. Now that it's cold out, Cove Pure makes getting hot water easy by instantly dispensing boiling water when you hit the hot option. You can also get cold or warm water depending on your needs for the day. Plus, Cove Pure is lab certified to remove up to 99.9% of contaminants. Not a chemical cocktail of fluoride, lead, PFAs from the tap. None of that when you're drinking water. You're getting just pure water. Another great feature is the preset cup sizes. If you are bad about drinking water regularly, well, this feature will be great for you. You pick your amount, 8 ounces, 16 ounces, and it takes the guesswork out. It's simple and will keep you consistent as well. It looks great and it's easy to set up. No plumbers or drilling, just plug it in and it's good to go. If you want a gift that's actually useful, click my link below, covepure.com/Walsh, and right now they're giving my viewers a special holiday discount of $250 off. So get it now before the sale ends. But unfortunately for CBS News and Margaret Atwood, that's not what the word banned actually means. So what are we doing here exactly? You know, this banned books narrative on the left has endured. It's one of the most enduring narratives. Even though it makes no sense, it is not even close to true. It has never been true. This has never actually happened. It's all made up. But it's just another way for washed up liberal boomers like Margaret Atwood to cosplay as persecuted revolutionaries long after every sane person has forgotten about them. So at this point, if I can offer some unsolicited advice to the left, it would be this. Read another book. Find any other book. I honestly don't care. Any book besides Handmaid's Tale or Harry Potter. Just find a third book that you can fixate on. Any book, I beg you. Don't say another word about Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling or The Handmaid's Tale or Margaret Atwood. There are more books out there. I don't know if you knew that, but there are actually more. There are more than 2 books that have ever been written. And unlike Harry Potter and The Handmaid's Tale, some of those other books are actually good. And if you read those books, they can even help you make more clever and timely analogies, which you can use in political arguments in the future. That's one of the benefits of doing a lot of reading. But as it stands, you might say that the left is, a lot like Captain Ahab and Moby Dick. They're endlessly chasing the white whale of right-wing totalitarianism, seeing it around every corner, even when it's not there, and it's destroying them. And that is why Margaret Atwood, CBS News, and every other leftist who's falsely whining about book bans in the year 2025 are all today canceled. Thanks for checking out this video. If you'd like to listen to my full podcast on the go, you can check out The Matt Walsh Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.